Okay, hello everybody. So, new unit of English, and this is the book that we're going to be looking at for the next sort of half of this term. For about good 3 weeks, we're going to be looking at this book. So this is Beowulf. There's different versions of this story, but we're going to be reading the Michael Morpurgo version. But again, there are simpler versions, there are more complicated versions out there, but this is quite a nice child-friendly version for us. We haven't got an online copy of this book, but if you did want to get hold of this book, obviously you can. It's completely your choice. I'm not saying that you have to, but it might be helpful if you did want to have a read of it at all. It is a really good story. And this copy is particularly nice because it's actually got 3 stories in one. So we're just going to be reading the first sort of story in this set, but there are 2 more stories that follow on, which are also really, really good stories to do as well. So today what we're going to do, we're going to try and keep it simple for this first week back, not overload you with too much. But the first thing is going to have a look at the book cover. So obviously you've got this one in front of you. I'll also put a separate copy on the Home Learning Hub. But we've got a picture of the front cover here. And also what's nice about this book is it does come with illustrations, not loads, but maybe sort of like every sort of couple of pages, there's a small little picture, and then every maybe 6 to 8 pages, there'll be a larger picture, which is really nice as well. So, having a look at this front cover, and I have written what I'm going to say down here as well. So the first thing you need to do is, by looking at the front cover, write a prediction about what you think the story may be about, but only looking at that front cover. So what can you see in here? So we can see that there's a person here. They've got a bow and arrow. It looks like they might be wearing armor of some sort. What else do you think about this person? Do they look strong? Do they look weak? If they're holding a bow and arrow, what sort of person might they be? I can see there's water here. It's quite dark in the background. There's a head. There's a head. 3 heads of maybe monsters. Are they from the water? Possibly. I can see them like their body or something, but sort of like snake-like. They're green as well. So what sorts of things do you start thinking just by looking at that image? And I've also given you another question to think about here. Does it remind you of any books you may have read in the past? Are there any characters like this person or these sort of monster-esque creatures? Does it remind you of anything? Just anything in general, really, not necessarily a story. Just, again, have a think. You might also want to have a think about the word. Does it sound like anything? Is there anything you can unpick from that title? Does it sound like an English word? Do you think it's a foreign word? What do you think about that title? So you might want to pause at this point and go and write a small paragraph, maybe 3 sentences, something like that. So a prediction about what you think the story might be about just based on this front cover. And like some of the things I just mentioned about the darkness, the water, the person, this supposed monster, you might want to jot a few extra ideas down before you write your paragraph. So that's job number 1. So you might want to pause now and do that first. So second job, after you've done this, hopefully, or you might be watching the video all the way through first, I don't know. Second thing, we have got this little bit of writing. Now this appears on the back of a book. Hopefully you know what that is called. So we've got a blurb here, and this is on the back of that Michael Morpurgo version of the book. And says here, so what I'd like you to do, we're going to read first of this blurb. And then we're going to underline or list any words. So I've given you a bit of an example here, such as fear, evil, stalks, darkness. So let's have a little read first, actually, before we carry on reading the paragraph. So this is the blurb. Hear and listen well, and I will tell you a tale that has been told for 1,000 years or more. It may be an old story, yet it troubles and terrifies us now as much as it ever did, for we still fear the evil that stalks out there in the darkness and beyond. So that is the blurb. It doesn't give too much away. There's a few sort of keywords in there. So what I'm asking you to do, obviously read the blurb, which you've done. So you might want to, obviously if you have a hard copy of this, you can underline, but equally you can just list out some words in your books. Underline or list any particular words that maybe stand out to you, any words that you think are quite significant. So I listed here fear, evil, stalks, darkness. I think as well, it's an old story, so it's obviously been around a very long time. It says here thousands of years and more. And what we're going to do is we're going to unpick these words a little bit more to try and delve a bit deeper into what the story might be about. So I've got a little example underneath. So we're going to create little spider diagrams, and we're going to try and write other words and phrases that these words have in common, or like word association. And then I've got a question here, like what genre of fiction do you think it might be? And then we're going to add to our first prediction after this. So this is the beginning of my example here for you. So I picked evil and darkness. I picked 2 words, not just one. So I started off over here. I started writing some synonyms out. There's lots more. I just did 4 or 5 for each. So I started listing some synonyms for evil. And again, you might be able to come up with lots more than what I came up with. So I thought of hateful, awful, malevolent, which is obviously one of our old words of the day, and wicked as well. And then I also wrote some synonyms for darkness. So gloomy, dark, maybe night, murky, cloudy. And again, there's lots more synonyms for these. You might want to write some antonyms as well, possibly, just to really emphasize what these words mean versus what they obviously don't mean. And then obviously, again, these are just 2 of the words that I chose. You might want to do fear, you might want to do stalks. You might pick, I don't know, a tale. How often do we use that word tale now? Again, have a think, really. Beyond as well. Think the darkness and beyond. When something means beyond, what does that word beyond mean? So there's other words you can pick to sort of write a bit more about. So again, I started writing some synonyms over here. I then just started writing a few notes here about what the possible genre might be. So again, a genre of a story is like the category it fits into, such as an adventure, a fantasy, a romance, and all things like that. So I just started trying to unpick what sort of story Beowulf might be, just based on some of the vocabulary I've read so far. So evil makes me think of, and I haven't filled it in because I don't want to give too much away. And I'm saying, well, why do I think this? So you're sort of making an inference here. Evil makes me think of blank because of blank. And then evil characters, I've said, are often associated with villains, like in a fairy tale, for example. But when else do you think of like evil characters or people who are being evil? And again, I've only talked about evil for now. I need to talk about darkness as well. Think, what does like darkness sort of represent? Nighttime. If things are happening in the dark, it's quite mysterious. You're quite unsure about what's happening. So again, these are just some ideas for your little spider diagram. Try and unpick the words you choose. You might want to carry on with my evil and darkness example. You might want to do fear, stalks, beyond, tale, There might be another word in here. Troubles and terrifies us. There's a nice little alliteration there. You pick whichever ones you like. You might want to do one for evil and then a separate one for darkness. It's up to you, really. It's however you would like to work. But once you've had a little go at doing your spider diagram and you've unpicked those bits of vocabulary, I'd like you then, as it says here, to go back and add to your previous prediction that you did from the first slide. Or equally, you might change it completely if you've now completely changed your initial idea from your very first prediction. So you should, by the end of this lesson today, end up with sort of a 3-sentence paragraph based on the front cover, a spider diagram, or maybe 2, unpicking some of the words from this blurb, and then you're either going to go back and add to that first prediction, or maybe even write a brand new prediction out after you have unpicked your blurb.